have you take, that you can ask the right questions and be well informed before entering into that negotiation. So let me know where you're tuning in from the world. If you are new to the Dr. Osborne Show, say hi. Again, we're going to dive in to the details tonight. So the show's about predominantly hydroxychloroquine. Now, this medication is, again, it's being used, it's being recommended, it's being used in hospitals, being recommended, it's being researched now as a treatment option for COVID-19. And there are a couple different reasons why. Number one is it's thought, again, the mechanism of action of the medication is not 100% clear. I actually interviewed last week one of the world's leading researchers on the toxic effects of hydroxychloroquine. I'm going to have that interview posted up for you sometime tomorrow, so stay tuned for that interview because I think it's going to be one that you're not going to want to miss. But the mechanism of action is that it basically, hydroxychloroquine, when it's given, it gets into the cell organelles, into the membranes of the cell organelles, and so it disrupts, again, this is the thought, that it disrupts viral hijacking of the cell. So when the virus tries to get into the molecular machinery of your cell so that it can replicate itself, this hydroxychloroquine concentrates in those areas, thus disrupting the ability for the virus to take hold. And this is why it's even being looked at as a potential for the treatment. Now, you should know that one of the trials that was actually started for the use of this medication in individuals with COVID-19 was stopped. And the reason why it was stopped is because this drug has toxicity impact. And so it's known to be a cardiotoxin. So cardiac toxicity, it can cause toxicity in the eyes, or retinal toxicity. And it's also a neurotoxin. And so this is what I wanted to warn you, because this happened a couple of weeks ago. There was a gentleman and his wife they basically were trying to take quinine in the form of chloroquine from some over-the-counter materials, and the man ended up dying. The woman ended up being hospitalized because this is a very, very toxic substance, and you don't want to just take it. And many people are talking, and there's a buzz about people taking it as a preventative, meaning take it to not get COVID. Terrible idea, in my opinion, and the reason why, again, is its potential for toxicity. You have to understand that this medication doesn't come without a cost. Now, some of you may already know about it, because many of you, if you've read No Grain, No Pain, you'll know that this is the same drug that's used to treat many people with rheumatological diseases. Things like lupus, it's a drug that's used to treat rheumatoid arthritis. So rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, JRA, juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. This drug, also known as Plaquenil, is oftentimes used to treat those conditions. And so because of its properties in helping to reduce pain. And so the dose, generally speaking, for an adult is 400 milligrams a day, which is somewhere between, really usually 200 milligrams the way the doctors write it, BID, which is Latin for bis and die, which just means twice a day. So the total milligram dose is 400 milligrams a day. Now, at this level, there have been studies that show that toxicities can occur. So this is a relatively low level. What I want you to understand is that some of the doctors that are using hydroxychloroquine to treat COVID-19 are recommending 600 to 800 milligrams a day, which is, almost 2 times and as much as 2 times the dose of what we might see in people with rheumatological disease. So, had the right letters there, 600 to 800. So again, much higher dosing, so much greater risk and much greater degree of the potential for creating a toxicity problem. Now, one of the problems with the medication from the neurotoxic perspective is that the damage can be permanent, meaning once the damage is done, there is no healing beyond it. In essence, when the damage is there, it's permanent. And so you have to, again, anytime you're thinking about using a medication or being prescribed a medication and making an intelligent decision about whether or not you should do it, you should understand that there is a risk, what's called a risk-benefit ratio, meaning does the risk of the side effects of the medication outweigh or is it greater than the benefit that the medication could provide? Now, I would say if you're on your deathbed and this is the last option that somebody's throwing at you, then, you know, risk-benefit ratio is a little bit less important. But we're talking here about preventative use. Many people, again, are going to their doctors asking for these medications because what they're hearing in the mainstream media about these drugs. And I would just, again, highly discourage anyone from wanting to use it as a preventative measure simply because of the greatest capacity for the risk of toxicity. Again, stay tuned tomorrow. We're going to be rolling out the interview with Dr. Remington Nevin, who's arguably one of the world's leading researchers in quinine drugs, which is this class of drug, the quinines, the chloroquine and the hydroxychloroquine and some of the others. He's one of the world leading researchers in the side effects of, or the toxicity of these medications, and he's going to spell it all out for you tomorrow when we launch that special interview with, that's Dr. Nevin. So anyway, pay close attention to your subscription channel for the notification for that interview. So what I also wanted to talk about tonight were just some different types of things that you could be doing. Again, I'm trying to give you practical information that you can apply in your day-to-day life. And so if we ask, I said earlier that one of the things that this drug does is it disrupts viral hijacking. And so I'm gonna make some room on the board here. How does it disrupt viral hijacking? So one of the ways that it's suspected that this drug blocks viral hijacking, I'm going to put up a slide, a research slide for you here on the screen, is that it is known as a zinc ionophore. Now, what is a zinc ionophore? A zinc ionophore means that this drug binds to zinc. Okay, so we'll just use HCQ as our example, and we'll make zinc here. And so it binds to that zinc and it pushes it into the cell. And then once it pushes it into the cell, it can push it into the cellular machinery, the Golgi apparatus, the other places in the cell like mitochondria, et cetera. It can push that zinc into those compartments in the cell where DNA and RNA replication can occur, which is where generally the virus likes to get to that component so that it can take over. And so as an ionophore, it pulls zinc into the cell. So generally speaking, zinc, there are receptors on the surface of the cell and receptors on the surface of the organelles in the cell that are zinc dependent. So the zinc passes through these receptors and it's like a door that opens and closes. And so, but what hydroxychloroquine does is it binds and it pulls it through into the cell and concentrates it into those areas of the cell. And so knowing that these medicines can do that, I want to talk a little bit about zinc tonight, moving on to that next slide, and show you that zinc as its role in playing a role as an antiviral and all the different things that it has the capacity to do. So again, I got another slide up here on the screen for you. You can see here an abundance of evidence has accumulated over the past 50 years to demonstrate the antiviral activity of zinc against a variety of viruses and via numerous mechanisms. Now, this was just recently published. This was a review of the literature. This was just published in 2019, just a few months ago. If we go, I want to pull up some of the slides from this actual study. Especially, I've got a nice image for you because I want to show you where zinc plays a role in inhibiting viral replication. It actually plays multiple roles in this process, and there are a number of research studies that demonstrate in vitro in humans. And again, these aren't test tube studies. These are actually studies on zinc and its role, the role that it plays in humans in active trials that show zinc actually is very effective against a number of different types of viruses. So as you're looking at this, you know, just to kind of go through it, you can see human clinical studies using zinc as an antiviral therapy, and that zinc for herpes simplex has been shown to reduce viral load. It's been shown to reduce the duration and severity of the outbreak and also to reduce the recurrence of an outbreak. You can see with the rhinovirus, zinc reduces the duration of illness, reduces symptom severity, frequency, and duration, reduces the the severity of the symptoms itself. You can see that with viral warts, which is another type of viral infection, that zinc leads to improved clearance of warts. And you can see with papillomatosis that zinc reduces the infection, increases the CD4 T cell counts, which is part of your immune system and helps your immune system fight. You can see with diseases like chronic hepatitis that zinc has been shown to reduce the markers for liver damage associated with that hepatitis. And you can see that zinc has also led to an enhanced response to treatments that are being used in chronic hepatitis. So zinc has a long track record in human trials. Now, if we're talking about some of the mechanisms of how zinc actually works, I want to show you another diagram that I think is important because it illustrates where zinc has a function or plays a role and has a function. So if you look at this diagram here, you can see that zinc interferes with the viral replication cycle to include virus inactivation, the inhibition of viral uncoating, the viral genome transcription component, as well as viral protein translation and polyprotein processing. So zinc is known to block viral replication at 4 different locations using 4 different mechanisms. So now, knowing all of that about zinc, let's back up to the board here and go back to what we know about hydroxychloroquine, which is hydroxychloroquine and chloroquine as medications are known zinc ionophores, meaning they concentrate zinc in areas of the cell where zinc can then be effective at doing the potential work of viral replication and inhibition. So, or inhibiting viral replication through multiple different mechanisms of action. So aside from those things, so again, I said earlier that the mechanism of action here was that these medicines potentially get zinc to the areas where zinc can then work its magic. So the next logical question would be, if hydroxychloroquine and chloroquine have known toxicity effects, what can we do that isn't going to create a toxicity effect that might also improve zinc having access into the cell? So that being the next logical question, I wanted to give you a couple of things that you could do, a couple of take-home messages, things that you could be doing for your immune health right now tonight. So let's put up this study on, got a research study on zinc ionophoric activity of quercetin. So again, I said that an ionophore is something that binds or chelates to zinc and helps it get into the cell. Well, this research study you can see here confirms that polyphenols transport zinc across the plasma membrane independently of plasma membrane zinc transporters. So what are those polyphenols? I've talked about these already in a number of shows. Quercetin is one of them that improves zinc concentration in the cell. And then we also have epigallocatechin gallate, which is a compound derived from the green tea and some other plant-based products. But that particular EPCG is what it's oftentimes referred to, epigallocatechin gallate and quercetin, both natural plant-based products that are known to increase the concentration of zinc in the cell where it can get in the cell and start actually having an impact. You can see here, again, in this research study, that the ionophore activity of dietary polyphenols may underlay the raising of labile zinc levels triggered in cells by polyphenols and thus many of their biological actions. Now, remember that zinc plays a role in more than just viral replication inhibition. Zinc plays a role in approximately, at least what we know of, several hundred different chemical reactions. Some of those reactions are also important as it relates to supporting the body to recover from viral problems. And one of those is in an enzyme system called SOD. SOD is an enzyme called superoxide dismutase. It's a very, very potent, very powerful antioxidant. And so again, one of the things that happens with viral infection is free radical buildup and damage to tissues. So the more you have antioxidants to protect you, the more solid your antioxidant status, the less risk for potential complications. And there are a number of research studies that have shown that with both zinc and vitamin C also acting as an antioxidant, which we've talked about a number of times. So now I want to pull up some more zinc research for you, or some more quercetin elements for you. So if you're looking at food sources of quercetin, let's pull that up, because if you want to eat your quercetin, you can do that too. You can also supplement with quercetin, but if you want to eat quercetin, if you look at this slide here that we've got for you, again, coming out of research, apples are rich in quercetin, broccoli, berries, onions, black tea, and grapes, all excellent dietary sources with high levels of quercetin. Of course, of this list, apples and berries being the ones that have the highest or the greatest quantity of quercetin in them. If you're using quercetin supplementation, of course, you can do that too. My advice would be understanding that quercetin is more bioavailable if you mix it with pomegranate. It enhances the bioavailability quite aggressively, which is one of the reasons why, you know, my formulation of quercetin has pomegranate in it. You can also, if you are taking supplemental quercetin, you can take it with pomegranate as well as a food and potentially increase the absorption of that quercetin that you're using. So those food sources, if you're trying to get more quercetin in you, are a good way to go. Again, you can also supplement with quercetin. Now, as far as the EPCG, the epicatechin, the galates, that particular substance is found predominantly in green tea. So if you drink your cup of green tea on a daily basis, then you're going to be getting a dietary source of that. Again, the more you can do it from a food-based source, the better you're going to be off, especially if you can't find supplemental sources of quercetin. It's really hard to find these things right now because the market has been so sold out because of people's fear over COVID-19 as a general rule. So if you can find those foods and, again, drink your green tea, you may be able to get access to some of that quercetin that'll help you better get that zinc into your cell membrane. So these are the reasons. If we're looking at hydroxychloroquine as being the potential for nerve, eye, and heart toxicity, but we look at the mechanism of action of why we think it works. It's because it gets zinc into the cell, allowing zinc to work its magic on the prevention and viral replication. As I showed you, there are 4 different areas where we know in human trials where zinc has actually been shown to reduce viral load and mechanisms behind viral replication. None of those studies have been done in COVID-19, but again, no real studies have been done in COVID-19 to prove or disprove any type of valid treatment. So again, I'm trying to give you strategies that you can implement, food-based strategies, nutrition-based strategies that you can implement to give your body the best immune support that you can. And please don't construe any of this as me trying to tell you how to treat or mitigate or prevent COVID-19. Again, I'm just trying to give you strategies on building your immune function. So all that being said, I want to open up the floor for any questions that any of you have tonight. We'll start with immune questions first, and then from there we'll add other questions as they come in. So let's see here. Oh, this is a question about testing. So Juan wants to know, how many days before an intracellular nutrition test must one stop taking oral supplements? One, if they're doing true intracellular testing, you don't have to stop taking supplements. The supplements that you're taking will not skew the results of an intracellular test. Mary wants to know what test to take to find out if you're zinc deficient. The best type of test, in my opinion, there are a couple of different kinds. One would be intracellular, using lymphocytes. So intracellular, using lymphocytes, which is a type of white blood cell. If you don't have access to that, or if your doctor's never heard of it, you can do RBC zinc levels. If you run serum zinc, you're going to be disappointed. Well, you're not going to be disappointed. You're going to get a misrepresentation of what your actual zinc storage levels are. Zinc in the serum is not a real accurate representation for measuring zinc health or zinc load or zinc levels in the body. So again, these two are probably some of your best ways. Now this is kind of an off way to do it, but it's not 100% accurate either. And that is, if you've got white spots on your fingernails, that can be a zinc deficiency, although it can be other mineral deficiencies as well. So again, it's not really a tried and true cut in stone way to say, okay, I need more zinc or I need to push more zinc. But because zinc is relatively safe to take, depending on your weight, adult males can take 100 milligrams a day real easy at 150, if they're 150 pounds or more, whereas females 50 to 75 milligrams, depending on your weight, might be a better dosing or might be a better level to use supplementally. But really safe to take and very effective. The worst that you really have to worry from zinc, if you're keeping the doses realistic, is that it can upset the stomach if you take it on an empty stomach. Let's see here. Not a question. Oh, yeah, there's a question in that. So Beauty says that, she says, thank you very much. I did my first C-flush. We talked about that last week for the first time in a long time, and I was pain-free. Love to hear that. I love to hear those anecdotal stories of people using nutrients to get pain-free. Can I take all my vitamins at the same time? Depends on what you're taking. I mean, usually, yes. Vitamins generally don't tend to interfere with each other. If you're taking them simultaneously, it's usually okay. But if you've got a specific example you'd like to ask about, I can entertain that question a little bit better. Let's see. Virginia from the UK. How you doing, US? I think we're doing okay. I think well, I think we're doing just fine. I think the reporting of COVID-19 is exaggerated, and I think there's some media lying that's happening. And I don't think the mortality rate is quite as high as what everybody is being told. And I don't think the hospitals are quite as busy as what everyone's being told. That being said, I think we're doing okay. I think most people want to avoid getting ill. And I think most people are also, a lot of people actually are tired of being sequestered into their homes. And there's a stress that goes along with that. But I think beyond that, I think we're doing pretty good. Elizabeth says, if a mandatory vaccine is rolled out, how best to protect your body from the danger of the vaccine? No such thing as a mandatory vaccine. I mean, if you're in the U.S., you've got freedoms, and those freedoms mean that mandatory vaccine shouldn't be something that should be able to be passed. Now, I know many of you may be nervous or scared that that's something that they're going to try to enforce, but we still have our rights. And remember, a mandatory vaccine, they would have to, before passing a mandatory vaccine, they would have to prove safety, which is in the time frame that they're trying to get that thing done. There's no way that they're going to be able to prove any type of safety. As a matter of fact, the science on this whole thing is, COVID-19, just the PCR testing alone, if we're talking about science, there's an 80% false positive rate on these tests, where people, and this is one of the reasons why the numbers have been exaggerated in the US, is that the testing is not all that accurate. So first of all, we don't have accurate testing to really be able to determine whether or not somebody actually has COVID-19 or some anomaly that looks like COVID-19. So if the science is a little iffy there, then the science around the safety, that's going to take years to determine. I mean, an average vaccine to determine any kind of safety is going to take 5 to 6 years of research to really get it to be to a point where safety is going to be either not in question or in question. And then if it is in question, then it's back to the drawing board for the researchers. So I don't know. I just don't think they're not going to put that shot in me. I can tell you that. I'll go down kicking and screaming, but I'm not going to take a shot. And my advice to you is, if you believe the way I believe, you wouldn't want to take it either. And don't let somebody force something into your body. It's your body. It's the one, sacred thing that you have on this planet and this earth. It's the one thing that you own, and you should never let anybody do anything to it that could potentially hurt it. And that includes injecting a non-tested, non-safety proven vaccine. There's just no way a vaccine can be rolled out that quickly and be proven safe and effective. You got to look at history. Those that don't know their history are doomed to repeat it. Look at vaccine safety in the past. A lot of the vaccines that were rolled out in times of mass panic had massive problems. There were people that were dying from getting the vaccines, people that were getting tremendous side effects from vaccines. So you don't really you don't really want to just roll over and let the government or anyone else or any doctor say that you have to get this vaccine in order to protect yourself from a disease that's killed less people. I mean, arguably, this disease has not killed a tremendous amount of people. I mean, it's killed some people, but let's think about it in perspective of what aspirin and opiates killed. Last year, aspirin and opiates combined killed almost 40,000 people. To date, that's more people than have died from COVID-19. So you don't see the government pulling those drugs off the shelf. So I think this is being overblown, and maybe there's some private or hidden agendas behind this. I don't know. I don't want to turn this show into a conspiracy theory speculation show, but I just want to say that if somebody's trying to force a vaccine on you, you've got to stand up and you've got to own yourself and own your rights to say what does and what does not go into your body. Is vitamin D naturally in milk? Sam wants to know. Yes, if it's breast milk, it is. It's naturally in breast milk. Is there much vitamin D in cow's milk? No. By the time you pasteurize it, homogenize it, there's not a whole lot left. That's why they fortify the milk. They fortify it with added vitamin D, but the naturally occurring levels are not that high in milk when you buy it at the grocery store. So Karen says, Dr. Osborne, currently taking Plaquenil for Sjogren's. Would increasing zinc with quercetin and EBCG allow me to possibly reduce the dosage? How much zinc recommendation and when during the day? So Karen, I can't give you specific advice like that. That I don't want you to construe what I'm doing as medical advice. I mean, the question would be better served with your doctor directly if they're even willing to talk about it. But my advice is if you've got a rheumatologist that doesn't respect nutrition, you need to find a doctor who will respect and have that nutritional conversation with you. Let's see here. If things get serious and we want to avoid intubation due to high death rate, yeah, by the time you're going on a tube, you're probably not going to make it, at least statistically speaking. What else is there other than H and A and zinc? Well, there's vitamin C. Vitamin C, actually, the research on that, go back and watch last week's show. I talked in depth about the research that's going on right now with vitamin C and all of the wonderful impact that it's having. But there's vitamin, and again, ask your doc, but vitamin C is a potential option for IV use and even high dose oral use. There's some pretty good research, not necessarily on COVID, but on viral infection that shows high dose oral vitamin C reduces ICU, intensive care unit time, by as much as almost 10%. And that's just at lower doses, at 6 milligrams or less of a dose. So many of you are currently probably taking, anywhere upwards of 10 plus grams of vitamin C right now in this scare. Let's see. Is there any side effects for you? For what? So I'm not sure about that question. Okay. Kimberly wants to know if you have an aspirin allergy. If I were you, I would look into food intolerance and sensitivity to natural. Okay, so that's not a question either. What do I think about ozone therapy? I think I don't have experience actually using ozone therapy, so I can't really comment on ozone and COVID. But I know there are some really great doctors using it with pretty good success. Some of my colleagues. So I'm not opposed to it. I think the question would be better served asked to those particular doctors, though. Cindy wants to know, I heard that quinine and tonic water in conjunction with zinc helps the zinc to get into the cells, therefore blocking viruses from replicating. There's no research that shows that. There's some internet theory and conjecture on quinine and tonic water, but you got to look at the dose of quinine and tonic water. First of all, quinine is a highly toxic substance, so I don't really recommend using it at any level, in any doses that are very high, especially when you have, research that shows that these guys are zinc ionophores anyway. So why not use them instead? That would be kind of the way I would look at going toward it. But tonic water to get quinine, I don't think you're going to have to drink a lot of tonic water probably to have any type of real effect. Okay. Let's see here. So this question coming in from Lady IFK. I just received my immune bundle. I fast on a 20-hour, 4-hour regimen. Can I take all my supplements during my 4-hour eating window? And which one of the supplements in the bundle don't break a fast? Well, they'll all break a fast. If when you break a fast, it's you're injecting something that your GI tract has to deal with, unless you're just talking about water. So yes, you can take them all within the 4-hour window of eating. That's perfectly fine. Let's see here. The logistics of securing IV vitamin C or IV ozone or hyperbaric chamber are virtually nil. This is why you have to have a good relationship with a good doctor. I mean, I've said this a number of times, and those of you, you hear me every week, and maybe some of you are new to the show, but I say this all the time, which is you've got to have a good doctor on your team who can do things like this. And it's not so much important that you have a good doctor when you're healthy, but it's good to have a relationship with the doctor, because when something like this happens, yes, the likelihood that you're going to be able to get in and make it happen when everybody like myself is super busy, we're super swamped, it's harder. It's harder to get these things done. So you remember, you plan for times of emergency and disaster and times of non-emergency or non-disaster so that you can be ready for it if it does happen. So it's really hard right now to get in to see somebody who's going to be able to potentially give you IV vitamin C or ozone, because their lines are backed up. Let's see here. Juan asked me why I won't pursue a medical doctor degree to work in Mayo or Cleveland Clinic. Why would I want to do that, Juan? Going back to school for another 4 years to spend, $250,000 to go back to school for 4 years so that I can digress my education doesn't make any sense. So I'm just going to keep going the way I am, but I appreciate the commentary. What about the carnivore diet and helping with COVID? It's low in inflammation factors or high in zinc. Thanks. There's no research showing that carnivore is helpful. I think carnivore can be helpful for some people. In my experience, carnivore is very helpful for people who don't tolerate vegetables that generally are FODMAP intolerant or oxalate intolerant. Carnivore diet can be very effective for those individuals as they restore and repair and heal their gut. But I don't think that going carnivore, if you're not already, is necessarily going to be something that is going to magically make you COVID proof. No diet, I think, is going to do that. I think all of your behaviors, your sleep, your sunshine, your exercise, your diet, your overall quality of choices that you make on a regular basis are the best defense that you have. What do I think about some of the other medications that are being tried on coronavirus patients? Look, I think the best thing that can be done is what I've already talked about last week, which is the high doses of vitamin C. I think there's some doctors that are using a mixture of high-dose vitamin C, hydroxychloroquine with hydroxycortisone that are having better results than the standard people in the ICU that are being intubated and given forced air. I think there are different parameters to this particular virus that are showing that the lungs themselves don't do well with forced air, because of the issue is not necessarily a lack of oxygen. The issue, and we haven't really talked about this, but the issue, or what they're finding to be the issue, is that the red blood cells contain a molecule or a protein called hemoglobin, and hemoglobin is like a cage. And so hemoglobin, in this sense, what's happening is the virus itself is damaging the hemoglobin, releasing free iron, and the iron is very oxidative, and so it sucks up all the antioxidants because iron is very oxidative, so it damages tissue. But the problem is you get a bunch of red blood cells that don't work. And so remember, the job of a red blood cell is to carry oxygen and to drop off carbon dioxide in the lungs. And so if you have red blood cells that don't work, it's like having a delivery truck, that's supposed to deliver groceries to the grocery store, but you don't have the stock, the people that run the stock to fill the truck. So the truck gets delivered, but the truck is empty. There's no oxygen, or there's no groceries in the truck, so to speak. And so what you're left with is oxygen deprivation, not because there's not enough oxygen coming in, but because there's no capacity to carry or deliver the oxygen. So the preservation of the red blood cell is a key element here. And one of the ways that we can preserve the functioning of the red blood cell is to protect the membrane around the red blood cell and to prevent viruses from penetrating. So how do we do that? In large part, we do that with antioxidant capacity. That's one of the reasons why they're theorizing that vitamin C works so well as an agent to prevent this problem. And so the medicines themselves, the drugs, don't act in the same type of fashion. I think your best bet is antioxidants, and particularly IV nutrition if you get into a bind with COVID-19. Hot Nancy says, you and Sarah G would make great friends. Promise. We are good friends, Nancy. Sarah and I, we go way back. We go back about 10 years. We've been friends. Let's see. Functional med docs are offering telemedicine only. They expressly ask folks with symptoms to stay home. Yeah, that's true. I mean, but there are centers where they do administer IVC and ozone therapy. And that's, again, that's where, you know, you've got to have a good relationship with a doctor who has access to those things for the times like this when you might need it. Does magnesium help prevent a cytokine storm? No nutrient really helps prevent a cytokine storm once it starts. Cytokine storm is this free radical damage. So the thing about iron creates these cytokine storms. Free, non-bound iron creates all kinds of damage. And by the time you're going into a cytokine storm, there's no nutrient that you're going to be able to take that's going to have any kind of major impact outside of IV nutrition, and that goes back to IV vitamin C. My best advice that I could give if you're trying to just keep your immune system strong and be as preventative from a cytokine storm perspective is that higher dose levels of vitamin C right now, you know, to give your body everything plus extra. Let's see here. C, quercetin, D, zinc, NAC, DHA, NAD, ashwagandha, L-arginine. Ashwagandha and L-arginine. So your question whether or not ashwagandha and L-arginine are something you should add to your arsenal, Greg. I'm not sure what your question is there, but L-arginine acts as a vasodilator, as an amino acid that's a precursor to nitric oxide, which is things that increase nitric oxide are showing to be helpful with COVID. And so vitamin C also helps with nitric oxide. L-arginine potentially could, theoretically, but should you add that to your repertoire of things? There's just not enough research to say yes, but you know, if you're taking supplements and you add a few more, I don't think it could hurt you. Do we need to take copper with certain doses of zinc? Depends. So it depends on how long you're taking the zinc. If you're taking it long-term, it's not a bad idea to be on some copper as well. Most studies show that the zinc-copper ratio is about 7.5 to 1, meaning that's zinc 7.5 milligrams to 1 milligram of copper. So 7.5 to 1 is the ratio to where you try to keep that balance the best that you can. But if you're doing short-term duration of zinc supplementation, not so much. Can that cause headaches? It can, especially in allergy season, it can potentiate headaches, especially as it's helping drain the sinuses. Because again, it's one of its functions, but it's pretty rare to see somebody develop a headache over NAC. There may be an ingredient in your NAC that you're reacting to, and it may not be the NAC itself. So Shelly wants to know about, as far as tonic water, Shelly, I don't recommend tonic water, but as far as zinc, Ultra Zinc is what I recommend. I don't even know that we have it in stock, to be honest with you. I think we're a couple of weeks away from having it in stock. But if you are wanting to get it and kind of get on our waiting list, so to speak, I would certainly encourage you to do that if you don't have any and can't find any. And then as far as vitamin C, we have something called Detox C that you can look for. We have it in powder or pill form. As far as kidney stones, there's so much false information about vitamin C and kidney stones. Vitamin C, unless you have a major oxalate sensitivity, vitamin C does not generally tend at all to increase the risk for the development of kidney stones. So that's kind of one of those nutritional myths that's been put out there and perpetuated by, I'll call it pseudoscience. Let's see here. Do I think NAC is helpful to take? Barb, did you see our show on NAC the other day? Well, the other day, it's been a couple weeks now. let's put up the link, if we can, Mel, to our COVID resource page. Folks, if you haven't been here, this is kind of the research page we've been accumulating over the past several months. And to date, there are like 7 or 8 hours of video material there that you can go and watch. We've got special videos on NAC and quercetin. We've got videos on vitamin C. We've got videos on the top supplements that we recommend to support immune function right now. That's all there, and it's all there for you, free of charge. There's no access. You just got to go check out that URL. So a lot of you are asking. I'm not answering your question because of the depth that I would have to go into. It would take me 20, 30 minutes to answer some of these questions accurately, but we've done the shows in the past that I want to lead you to get those answers. Marcia says, why are none of the medical experts making these huge decisions for the American people, or doctors explaining the disease on TV, speaking on how to boost the immune system? Here's why, Marcia. Here's what we've been told as alternative doctors. I've been told by my boards, I've been told by the upper powers that if we talk about treating, curing, mitigating COVID-19 with nutrition, then we'll be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Now that comes from higher up. That comes from the CDC. That comes from the WHO. Why? I don't know. I can't explain. All I can say is that a lot of the doctors, the so-called doctors that are kind of in the, we'll say, the lead roles, most of them are politicians and not doctors. They are doctors, but they're politicians first. And politicians don't tend to make decisions always in the best interest of the people, even though that people elected them there to make the best decisions for the people. It just, you know how politics works. I don't think we have to have a political talk for everybody to understand that politicians generally are liars, thieves, and thieves, or liars, thieves, and cheats, and generally are out for their own interest and personal gain at the cost of the people that put them in office. And now I don't want to generalize for absolutely every single politician in the world, but that's a lot of what we're seeing. And I can't answer that question. I can't claim to speak their minds or know their minds. But I know that many of them are just not in it for the right reasons. Can a person do the tests that I have told them to take, or should we wait? If there's testing coming out from my office that we're recommending that you take, no, do them. Do them and get them done. There's no direct reason why you shouldn't, in my opinion. Let's see. My phyto multivitamins have 8 milligrams of zinc per caplet. Is that okay to maintain a healthy level? It depends, Linda. 8 milligrams of zinc is not a terrible amount. It's a decent amount. But if you're zinc deficient, you've all heard me probably use the analogy of spitting on a forest fire. If you're zinc deficient, that's not going to do a whole lot. Remember that we're talking about immune system, strengthening the immune system, or supporting the immune system in a stronger way. We're talking about what's referred to as, there's a term, orthomolecular. What is that? Orthomolecular means right molecule. And generally it refers to the practice of nutritional medicine, meaning you're using the right molecule to achieve the right effect. And so with orthomolecular dosing, is very important. In other words, the strength and the quantity matters. And a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to just go buy zinc, and they're getting 8 milligrams or 2 milligrams. But I can tell you the therapeutic dose of zinc starts at no less than 25 milligrams for an adult. So if you're getting 8 milligrams, and maybe you're eating another 5 milligrams or so from your diet, you're at a half of a therapeutic dose. So if you're trying to achieve a therapeutic dose, then the 8 milligrams in your multivitamin is not really going to do much. Sharon wants to know, how effective is hydroxychloroquine for RA? I think the better question isn't how effective is hydroxychloroquine for RA. I think the better question is, why in the heck would somebody take hydroxychloroquine for a disease where we know the trigger factors, and if you changed your diet and got your diet and your lifestyle dialed in, you wouldn't even need the hydroxychloroquine. Remember the long-term side effects of these drugs. They can create blindness, they can create eye problems, they can create cardiotoxicity. Heart disease is the #1 cause of death in the United States. We don't need any extra help getting there. And then they can cause neurotoxicity. And so it's not an issue of how effective is it for taking to treat a disease. It's more the issue, and I'm not trying to pick on you, but it's more an issue asking the question why you have the disease in the first place. functional medicine, which is root cause resolution, which is what is the origin of the problem, and not what can I take to mitigate the symptoms so that I can continue to lie to myself about my current behaviors and why my current behaviors are contributing to that illness. Remember, all progress starts with the brutal truth, and that means the brutal truth to yourself. Don't lie to yourself by masking your symptoms with medicine to ensure that you can stay functional when in reality you may not make the meaningful changes that you need to make. Remember, pain is a great motivator, which is why I don't believe in medicating pain unless there's no other alternative or option. There are certain situations where medicating pain, terminal cancer patients is one of those examples where medicate all you want. It's a quality of life issue. But when we have somebody who's masking their own personal pain so they can continue to make the same mistakes over and over again, that's not compassion. That's pseudo-compassion. And pseudo-compassion doesn't get anybody anywhere. Real growth starts with truth. So I'm going to get off that horse now, but hydroxychloroquine for RA is the wrong question to ask. When are we going to hear this from the media? Nadine wants to know. I don't know. If anybody, I'm a numbers guy, so anybody can look at the research and the numbers, and what we're seeing is we're seeing the same death rates. So if you look at death rates from last year and death rates this year, there aren't any big changes. And so, everybody's talking about how COVID is so dangerous and killing so many people, but the reality is a lot of diseases or a lot of deaths are being blamed on COVID, but it's not actually COVID that killed the person. The person had 3 or 4 or 5 other comorbidities along with it, and so it wasn't necessarily the COVID that killed them. They just happened to have COVID, but they also died of a heart attack. And so then they're calling it a COVID death. So the numbers are being artificially inflated. The busyness of the hospitals is being artificially reported in the media. NBC News was caught the other night lying about the hospitals in New York, and they were showing you pictures of hospitals in Italy and how busy they were, but they were actually talking about the hospitals in New York. And so I think there's a lot of this doesn't add up, and I don't really want to get into that because I don't think it serves our conversation, because I would just be speculating as much as many of you are sitting at home and with your spouses and your family members speculating, why this feels wrong, why there's something just not quite right about what we're being told and the information that we're being given. And I don't want to turn this show into a speculative arena. I want to give you information that you can take home tonight and feel more confident that if you apply the information, you're going to be in a better place tomorrow and getting through this. So, but I can't speak for the media and the politicians. Let's see here. Additional immunity ideas. Get UVB sunlight. Okay, so that's a comment, I think, more than anything else. Yes, I've heard about food shortages, but there really aren't any food shortages. There are actually farmers burning food excesses. So I don't know that COVID per se has caused an actual food shortage. Let's see here. Autoimmune patients stay on chloroquine for years without side effects. Lupus, scleroderma. So autoimmune patients do stay on hydroxychloroquine for years or Plaquenil for years, but you're saying without side effects, and that's just not true. There are definitely side effects, and there's definitely a risk-benefit ratio using those medications. The issue, if it's a dire situation, what I'm not saying tonight is if you're on your deathbed in a hospital and hydroxychloroquine is what they're going to try to use on you, I'm not trying to tell you to, on your deathbed, to have an argument with your doctor. What I'm trying to tell you is there are a lot of people out there in the world tonight that are so scared of COVID-19 that they're doing things like asking to take hydroxychloroquine and chloroquine as a preventative. And so, again, listen to what I'm saying. Don't put words in my mouth either. I'm not saying that if you're dying that you should argue with your doctor. I'm saying that using this as a preventative, in my opinion, is a huge mistake that's going to create massive amounts of toxicity if it's allowed to happen. This is exactly why the presidential order to use hydroxychloroquine and chloroquine in the hospital is not for prevention. It's not for treatment of mild cases. So if you look at the laws on this, the current law as it is in effect is that this drug is only being approved right now for severe cases where it is life-threatening. But many people are going to their doctor and asking for the drug as a preventative. Understand that if you're using this as a preventative, the risk-benefit toxicity profile is too great, and it's a foolhardy thing to do for the sake of trying to prevent something that has already a relatively low mortality rate. I think you're trading the risk of potential neurotoxicity and blindness for the risk that you might get sick from COVID-19 and that you might potentially have a progressive case of COVID-19. Remember that COVID-19 is not as progressively dangerous as what the media is portraying it to be and what the numbers are actually panning out to show. And so again, using a drug that has a known high toxicity profile is a bad idea as a prevention agent. I'm not talking about if you're dying and this is the option that you're faced with making. I'm talking about as a preventative. Okay, let's see here. So when to take quercetin? I mean, you can take quercetin anytime. As far as being therapeutic with it, it's anywhere between 1 and up to as much as 10 grams a day. I don't really recommend those super high doses unless you're being monitored, but 1 to 2 grams a day is perfectly fine for quercetin and perfectly safe for quercetin to use as a zinc ionophore to help that zinc get into the cell. But quercetin is also a very, very powerful antioxidant. So if we're talking about the antioxidant component of protection, it also kind of works as a dual agent. Let's see. Sharon wants to know if I have a supplement to help support thyroid. There's a lot. Sharon, the best thing I could recommend that you do is go back and watch. I did a video, and I'll probably repeat it in the future, but I did a video on nutrition needed for healthy thyroid function. And there are 17 different nutrients that your thyroid needs to be able to be produced and to be able to be maintained. And so go back and watch that video. If you're not subscribed to my YouTube channel, make sure you head over to Glutenology on YouTube and type in thyroid help in the search engine, and you'll be able to pull that video up, no problem. Do organic coffee enemas increase your glutathione? No, they don't increase your glutathione directly. They might increase your glutathione indirectly because they stimulate you to produce bile, which then acts as a toxin binding agent in the GI tract, which preserves your internal glutathione. So they could potentially increase your glutathione indirectly, but not directly, at least not to my knowledge. Somebody may have research that proves me wrong, but to my knowledge, they don't increase your glutathione directly. Okay. Can magnesium supplementation increase your need for potassium? Yeah, I mean, you can overdo magnesium, but generally in the 600 to 1,000 milligram range, you're not going to. You're really safe in that regard. If zinc's making you nauseous, somebody's chiming in that zinc makes her nauseous, make sure you take it on a full meal. So eat a full meal and then take the zinc. If it still makes you nauseous, it may just not be a good fit for you. Not everybody tolerates it, or the pill dose may be too high. I've had very rare occasions where people couldn't tolerate 25 milligrams of zinc, so we had to put them on lower, more frequent but lower doses with food, so 10 milligram doses instead of 25 milligram doses. Keep going. Yes, when to tell. Okay. Oh, Nadine, you didn't stir up anything, so no offense. None of you are going to ever offend me with your questions or commentary. Not really. I mean, I know it's a trying time for all of you, and everybody's nervous and scared and just trying to get answers. And I may sometimes get a little bit, we'll just say I might sometimes go on a roll, but no offense taken. Wouldn't it, so Miriam wants to know, wouldn't it be helpful for more people to be tested in order to see if immunity is being achieved? That's the problem, Miriam. You're absolutely right. It would be helpful if we had more people being tested for COVID-19. But the big problem is we don't have antibody tests to measure that. There's no testing available. And that is the crux of the issue. The testing that's being rolled out right now is a testing, it's called PCR. PCR stands for polymerase chain reaction. And PCR testing measures for the DNA. It's actually they're measuring for the presence of the DNA, and then they amplify that to see if whether or not that's present. The problem with COVID-19 is that actually it hasn't fully been extrapolated. The DNA sequence of the virus itself has not been even fully extrapolated. So we're relying on technology to test for something that hasn't fully been extrapolated. And research shows there's a potential for as much as 80% false positive rate. So if we're basing our numbers on the current PCR methodology of testing, then we're going to have an artificially high norm of people who are coming down with COVID or who are being told they have COVID when they might not. And the implication for that is quite dangerous, because if you go get tested because you think you might have it and you get a false positive and now they quarantine you and they potentially take you out of your home, take you away from your family, what's that going to do to your health? Plus, there's the psychosomatic, psychological component to being told you have a disease that you don't actually have, and then you can actually, your health can actually deteriorate due to the belief that you have it. So there's a whole gambit of problems with the testing right now, which is, why I think it's probably the best thing that you can do right now is to sit tight and take care of your own health and take care of your own families more than anything else. If you're on an iron supplement and you get COVID, should you still take your iron supplement? Depends. If you're severely anemic because you have iron deficiency anemia and that's been diagnosed and you're on that iron supplement for that reason, and then you come down with COVID, yes, you should continue to take your iron. Remember that not all cases of COVID progress to this severe case where you get red blood cell rupturing and iron release. That these are, the severe progressive cases aren't the norm. Most people are going through a normal kind of cold component. Yes, it's a little harder on the lungs. Yes, there can be some lung damage, but most people aren't being, incapacitated as a result of getting an infection. A lot of people, when they get it, are just recovering from it. So to stop or to start a supplement for or against because you have it, I would say is a case-by-case basis, and be a better question that maybe if your doctor prescribed you iron, maybe be a better question to communicate with them about. Let's see. Do you have melatonin? Yes, I do have melatonin, but you can also make melatonin by going outside. The best way to get melatonin is sunshine on your eyes. So go outside without sunglasses or UV protective agents. That's how we get it, is that sunlight hits our eyes and it converts or helps us to convert and create melatonin. Okay. Let's see here. Cheryl wants to know, how contagious is COVID-19 really? We really don't know. Here's what we do know. The size of the virus itself is so small that the masks don't do anything. So, I see a lot of people out there wearing masks. They're being told to wear masks, not so much to prevent getting the disease, but to prevent the spread. But the virus is so small, if you have a mask on, you're really not going to prevent it. It can pass right through that mask. I mean, that mask is like an open door compared to the size of that virus. And so I think a lot of people are overdoing it with masks. Let's see here. How about ozone therapy? Dr. Rowan uses this and has a do-it-yourself video. I don't have any experience per se with ozone therapy, Ron, but I've had doctor colleagues of mine that are using it and making claims of it being very helpful. So in that regard, I just can't comment intelligently enough on ozone therapy or speak intelligently enough based on my experience with it. Dwayne wants to know, good supplements to combat radiation exposure. Probably one of the best is iodine. Iodine is fantastic for radiation exposure. That and high doses of antioxidants, vitamin C, among other antioxidants, very good to help with radiation exposure. Polyphenols, plant-based compounds like quercetin, helpful for radiation exposure. eating real food like blueberries, blackberries, raspberries. The reason they can survive the 100-degree weather in the sun, and that's solar radiation, right, is because of the plant polyphenols that protect their skin from deteriorating from the rays of the sun. And when you eat those things, you transfer those active plant-based ingredients into your body, and you also too get that same type of protection. Let's see here. What do I think about nebulators with hydrogen peroxide? I think that's probably a bad idea. I think if you're going to use a nebulizer to get something in you, use nebulizer and use glutathione. To do that, you need to contact your doctor and get a prescription for glutathione. But nebulized glutathione, there is good research that shows that it's very, very helpful for lung tissue, especially in acute respiratory and in chronic respiratory inflammatory situations. Okay, I think we covered most of it. And a lot of you are asking, well, Steve says, I saw a video saying that coronaviruses have a fat coating or an outer layer. All membrane-based organisms do. They have what's called a phospholipid bilayer or outer coating. So wouldn't high humidity help drastically? Not necessarily. High humidity is not really going to do much to a coating or a fatty outer layer, like steaming with eucalyptus oil. No, because it's not going to do a whole lot. Not really. Not high humidity. I mean, I live in Houston, and some of the areas that are most impacted by these viruses are the high humidity areas. Look at Louisiana, who's having, some of the higher case loads and some of the higher problematic loads. And they live in one of the most humid places in the United States. So high humidity is not really going to do a whole lot. I would say, if anything, what's going to do more is just is a healthy immune system overall. So going back to what we've been talking about for the last 2 months, remember, folks, the most important things that you can be doing right now, spending time with your family because you're in lockdown. So getting that personal time that you've been asking for, but now that you have it, don't know quite what to do with yourself. Turn off the TV. Make sure you go to bed on time, get good sleep. You should be eating real food right now. You should be drinking plenty of water. You should be getting sunshine. You should be maintaining your good exercise regimen or protocol. Those are the things that are going to help you get through this. Those are the things that are going to keep your immune system in top shape. There's no magic bullet. But if you want to be as preventative as you can be, you've got to take care of your body. So that being said, we're going to wrap it up. We'll see you again next week, same time, 6 p.m. for another episode of Pick Dr. Osborne's Brain. Make sure you tune in tomorrow. I'm releasing a special interview with Dr. Nevin on the toxicity of chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine. And this guy is one of the world's leading researchers. He's an expert in the topic. And so we got that special research update coming out tomorrow for you. So stay tuned. We're going to be sending it your way. Have a great evening. Have a great week. We'll see you next time. Hey, don't forget to tune in next week, same time, 6 p.m. Central Standard Time for another Pick Dr. Osborne's Brain show. Bring all your toughest health questions to me. I look forward to answering them. And before you leave today, make sure you hit subscribe. And once you do, click that bell. That bell is going to allow us to remind you right before we go live. But it's also going to allow us to remind you when we come out with other video content all week long. We've got lots of episodes coming your way all week long, and I don't want you to miss anything. So again, subscribe, hit that bell so that you can get notified when we have that new information put up for you. Thanks so much, and I'm wishing you excellent health. Have a great week. We'll see you next Monday night.